The $100 bill hit the marble floor with a soundless weight. In the center of the plaza's ballroom, under the suffocating glow of crystal chandeliers, Julian Keswick smirked. He adjusted his Armani cuff, his eyes gleaming with the casual cruelty of a man who had never been told no. "Pick it up, Leo," Julian whispered, loud enough for the circle of socialites to hear. "It's a tip for the coffee, and for the years I spent listening to your vision while you were busy being a clerk." Beside him, Sienna didn't look away. She didn't look guilty, she looked bored. She wore diamonds that cost more than the surgery my daughter needed to stay alive, diamonds bought with Julian's money, in a life she chose when she walked out on me and a baby with a failing heart. The jazz quartet played something smooth and expensive, notes that didn't belong to people like me. The crowd had formed a loose circle, the kind that forms when people smell blood in the water. They held champagne flutes like shields, their eyes hungry for entertainment. I didn't reach for the money. I didn't even look at it. I looked directly at the man who had stolen my life's work, and then I looked at the door. "The thing about foundations, Julian," I said, my voice low and steady, cutting through the melody, "is that if you don't understand the math, the whole thing eventually comes down, even if it's wrapped in gold." Julian's smirk faltered for half a second. Just half. Then it returned, wider, sharper. He waved the $100 bill like a white flag of surrender I was supposed to accept. "What are you talking about, Leo? Still stuck on theory while the rest of us build empires?" I stepped over the bill. The sound of my shoe on marble echoed louder than it should have. I walked past Sienna, whose hand twitched toward my arm but never made contact. I didn't see her. I only saw the exit. And behind me, the murmurs began. Whispers that Julian tried to drown with laughter, but couldn't. 18 months earlier, my life was measured in beeps. Beep, beep, beep. The oxygen monitor clipped to 4-year-old Luna's finger was the only clock that mattered in our cramped Bronx apartment. The wallpaper was peeling near the window, curling at the edges like old photographs. The radiator clanked through the night, sometimes giving heat, sometimes just noise. I sat at a kitchen table that doubled as a drafting board, the light of a single dying bulb flickering over my old college thesis. I was a man living a double life. By day, I was an assistant clerk at Vance Industries, fetching 175-degree lattes for the formidable Eleanor Vance. I was invisible, the guy who filed the blueprints but wasn't allowed to draw them. By night, I was a father fighting a war against poverty and time. Luna stirred in her sleep, her small chest rising and falling in rhythm with the machine. She had her mother's eyes, dark and deep, but she had my stubbornness. Even at 4, she refused to complain about the wires, the needles, the constant hum of medical equipment that had become her lullaby. Sienna had vanished when the medical bills hit 5 figures. She hadn't left a note, she'd just left a void. One morning, I woke up to an empty closet and a forwarded hospital invoice. No explanation, no fight, just absence. And while I was counting pennies for filtered water and measuring Luna's medication in milliliters, my former classmate, Julian Keswick, was being hailed as a genius for Harmony Heights, a luxury mixed-use tower in Lower Manhattan that was winning awards and gracing magazine covers. I'd seen the unveiling on a television in a hospital waiting room. I'd watched Julian stand on a stage in a tailored suit, accept a crystal trophy, and describe the modular cantilever system, the solar integration, the revolutionary load-bearing design. Every word was lifted from my thesis, every diagram, every ratio, every innovative angle. But I had no proof. I had a binder full of old sketches, and a daughter who needed a new heart valve more than I needed justice. So I filed the blueprints. I made the coffee. I stayed invisible. Until the night I stopped being able to ignore what I saw. It was 11:47 p.m. when I noticed the flaw. I wasn't supposed to be in the office. The senior architects had long gone home to their brownstones and their sleeping families. But I'd stayed because the overtime pay meant an extra week of Luna's prescriptions, and because the empty office was quieter than my apartment, where every sound reminded me of what I was losing. I was organizing the final drafts for the waterfront project, Eleanor Vance's legacy build, a glass and steel monument to sustainable urban living. It was supposed to revolutionize mixed-income housing. But as I cross-referenced the structural engineer's notes with the solar array schematics, I saw it. The array was angled for aesthetics, not physics. The senior architect had prioritized the way the building would photograph over the way it would function. In a decade, maybe less, the thermal load would create microfractures in the glass. The facade would shatter. People could die. My hand hovered over my phone. I could email the lead engineer, flag it, let someone else fix it. That's what a clerk would do. But I wasn't just a clerk. I pulled up my own thesis files, the ones I kept buried in a password-protected folder I hadn't opened in years. The modular cantilever system I designed, the one Julian had stolen, could fix this. I opened a new CAD file and started drafting. My fingers moved across the keyboard like muscle memory, like breathing. I recalculated the load-bearing ratios, angled the solar panels for maximum efficiency, and integrated a support system that would distribute the thermal stress across the entire facade. By 4 a.m., it was perfect. Better than perfect. It was elegant. I saved the file under an anonymous tag and uploaded it to the shared server. Then I went home, microwaved leftover pasta, and fell asleep sitting up in a chair next to Luna's bed. 2 days later, Eleanor Vance stood in the clerk's bullpen. Her presence was like a sudden drop in barometric pressure. The air got heavy. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. "Who touched the waterfront files?" she demanded. The senior partners tried to stammer out an answer, shuffling papers, pointing fingers. Eleanor ignored them. She walked straight to my desk and threw my old Columbia portfolio onto my keyboard. The sound was like a gavel. "I hired a clerk because I needed someone to keep my office organized," Eleanor said, her steel-gray eyes boring into mine. "But I found a man who's been drawing the future while no one was looking." My throat went dry. I didn't know whether I was about to be fired or sued. "Why haven't you sued the Keswicks for Harmony Heights?" Eleanor asked. The question landed like a slap. I blinked. "I don't have the money for a lawyer, Ms. Vance," I replied. "I have a daughter who needs a new heart valve." Eleanor didn't offer sympathy. She didn't soften. She leaned against my desk, arms crossed, and studied me the way an architect studies a blueprint, looking for flaws, looking for potential. "You're smarter than everyone in this building," she said, "and you've been wasting it fetching coffee and keeping your head down. Why?" "Because I need this job," I said. "Because I can't afford to make waves." Eleanor's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. It was sharper than that. "Waves sink boats, Mr. Brennan, but tsunamis reshape coastlines." She straightened, pulled a business card from her jacket and placed it on my desk. "Patricia Zhao, intellectual property attorney, pit bull in a pantsuit. Call her, tell her I sent you." I stared at the card. "Then what?" "Then you let her do what she does best," Eleanor said. "But not yet." She glanced around the bullpen at the senior architects pretending not to listen. "I'm promoting you to Chief Creative Officer, effective Monday. But you're going to stay a clerk in public for 2 more weeks. You're going to that reunion. You're going to let Julian Keswick think he's still winning." Her eyes gleamed like polished steel. "Because when we hit him, I want it to be a demolition, not a dispute." The next 2 weeks were a fever dream. By day, I filed papers, answered phones, and kept my head down. The senior architects treated me the same as always, invisible, unremarkable. But by night, I was something else. Patricia Zhao was exactly what Eleanor promised, a pit bull in a pantsuit. She had a corner office in Midtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that made you feel like you owned the city. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Sit," she said, gesturing to a leather chair. "Tell me everything." I told her about the thesis, about the late nights in the Columbia Architecture Lab, about the modular cantilever system that had earned me honors, and the attention of professors who said I'd change the skyline someday. I told her about Julian, The charming classmate who always asked to borrow notes, who showed up at my apartment with coffee and compliments, who had access to everything. And then I told her about Harmony Heights, the building that launched Julian's career, the building that was my design, line for line, ratio for ratio. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she opened her laptop and pulled up side-by-side images. "Your thesis," she said, pointing to the left screen. "Julian's building," she said, pointing to the right. "It's not similar, Leo. It's identical." She leaned back in her chair. "We can win this, but I need more than a copied design. I need a kill shot." I swallowed hard. "What kind of kill shot?" "The kind that makes him radioactive," Patricia said. "The kind that doesn't just win a lawsuit, it ends a career." Over the next 10 days, we built the case. Patricia's team forensically audited every document related to Harmony Heights. Permits, contractor agreements, material orders. And I did what I did best. I analyzed the blueprints. Late one night at 3 a.m. in Patricia's conference room, I found it. My hands started shaking. "Patricia," I said. She looked up from her notes. "He swapped the materials." "What?" "The polymer-reinforced concrete," I said, pulling up the specifications. "My design required a high-density composite to handle the cantilever load. Julian used standard 4,000 psi concrete." Patricia's eyes widened. "What does that mean?" "It means Harmony Heights is standing on a prayer," I said. "The building's beautiful, but it's broken." I stared at the blueprints spread across Patricia's conference table like an autopsy. The numbers didn't lie. Julian had copied the theoretical math, the elegant curves, the award-winning aesthetics. But he hadn't understood the engineering. He'd treated my thesis like a paint-by-numbers kit, filling in the lines without comprehending the physics underneath. The polymer-reinforced concrete wasn't just a suggestion. It was the entire foundation of the cantilever system. Without it, the load-bearing capacity was compromised. The building could hold for now, maybe even a few years. But eventually, micro-fractures would spread through the structure like cancer. The weight distribution would shift, and when it failed, it wouldn't be gradual. It would be catastrophic. "How long?" Patricia asked, her voice clipped and clinical. I ran the calculations again, checking my work. 5 years, I said. Maybe 7 if they're lucky. But the degradation starts immediately. Every winter freeze, every summer expansion, it gets worse. Patricia's fingers flew across her keyboard. "There are people living in that building, families." I nodded. "I know. We have to evacuate it," I said, "before we go public, before any of this hits the press." Patricia looked at me, something like respect flickering in her sharp eyes. "You're not just trying to win, are you? You're trying to save lives." "I'm trying to do both," I said. Patricia stood, pacing to the window. Her reflection ghosted against the Manhattan skyline. "This is leverage, Mr. Brennan. The kind that doesn't just win lawsuits. It destroys empires. We go to the Department of Buildings first, get the evacuation order. Then we go public at the reunion." She turned back to me. "Are you ready for that?" "For what?" "For Julian Keswick to lose everything in front of everyone," Patricia said. "Because once we pull this trigger, there's no going back." I thought of Luna, of the beeping monitors, of Sienna's diamonds, of the years I'd spent invisible, filing papers, swallowing humiliation. "I'm ready," I said. 3 days later, the reunion invitation arrived in my inbox. It was embossed, gold-leafed, unnecessarily expensive. Julian's personal note was attached. "Can't wait to see what you've been up to, old friend. Bring your daughter if her health allows. I'd love for Sienna to meet her." I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to Patricia with a one-word reply. "Perfect." The Plaza Hotel smelled like old money and new scandal. I arrived alone. Luna was with a nurse preparing for surgery that had been scheduled for the following week. Eleanor had pulled strings, called in favors, but the date was set. Tonight, I had a different kind of operation to perform. The ballroom was exactly as I remembered from the promotional photos. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, a jazz quartet playing in the corner. alumni in designer suits and dresses that cost more than my annual rent. I saw them before they saw me. Julian in a charcoal Tom Ford suit holding court near the bar, and Sienna in a dress the color of champagne, her wrist dripping with diamonds that caught the light like little shards of betrayal. She saw me first. Her eyes widened just slightly. Then she leaned over and whispered something to Julian. Julian turned. His face split into a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Leo!" he called out, waving me over. "My God, is that really you?" I walked toward them. The crowd parted slightly, sensing something. "You look tired, Leo," Sienna said, her voice dripping with concern that felt rehearsed. "Are you sleeping okay?" "I'm sleeping fine," I said. Julian clapped me on the shoulder too hard. "What are you working on these days? Still chasing that social impact architecture dream? Or did you finally get practical?" "I'm working on a remediation plan," I said. Sienna laughed, a bright, brittle sound. "Remediation? For what?" "For Harmony Heights," I said. The laughter stopped. Julian's grin tightened. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone. "I'm talking about the fact that you stole my thesis, Julian, and you didn't understand a single line of it." I tapped a command. Behind them, the projector screen that had been looping a highlight reel of Julian's awards flickered. Then it changed. Side by side, my thesis on the left, Julian's blueprints on the right. The plagiarism was undeniable, highlighted in brutal, bleeding red. The ballroom went silent. Phones came out. The golden boy began to tarnish in real time. "You stole the design, Julian," I said, my voice louder now, projecting. "But you didn't understand the load-bearing ratios. You used standard 4,000 psi concrete for a cantilever that requires polymer reinforcement." Julian's face went the color of ash. "You're lying. You're just a bitter clerk who couldn't make it." "The city's Department of Buildings is at the front door of Harmony Heights right now," I continued, "with a vacate order, because your building is a death trap." The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed. Sienna's diamond bracelet slid down her trembling wrist. And then a voice cut through the chaos like a guillotine. "He's my chief creative officer." Eleanor Vance stepped into the circle, looking every bit the queen of the skyline. She wore a black suit that made her look like she'd arrived to foreclose on someone's future. Her heels clicked against the marble with the precision of a countdown. She didn't look at Julian. She looked at the crowd, at the phones recording, at the journalists who had suddenly materialized from the cocktail hour shadows. "Vance Industries has just filed a $50 million intellectual property suit against Keswick and Laurent," Eleanor announced, her voice carrying across the ballroom without a microphone. "And as for Mr. Brennan," she turned slightly, acknowledging me with the barest nod, "he's the only architect in the city I trust to fix the mess Julian made." Julian's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. "This is insane," he stammered. "You can't just—" "Eleanor, you know me. We've worked together." "We haven't worked together," Eleanor said coldly. "You've presented at conferences I've attended. There's a difference." She pulled a document from her assistant's waiting hands and held it up. "This is the evacuation order, signed 2 hours ago. Harmony Heights is being cleared as we speak. Every tenant, every business, gone by morning." Julian lunged forward, desperation cracking through his polished veneer. "You're destroying my career over a grudge, over coffee runs and some old college rivalry." "I'm destroying your career over fraud," Eleanor corrected, "and over the 217 families you put at risk because you were too arrogant to hire an actual engineer." The room erupted. Questions shouted from every direction. Sienna reached for my arm, her fingers cold and trembling. "Leo, please," she whispered. "We can talk about this. We can fix this." I looked down at her hand on my sleeve. For a moment, I saw the woman I'd loved, the woman who'd promised forever in a courthouse at 22, who'd painted Luna's nursery yellow because she said it was the color of hope. But that woman was gone. This one wore diamonds bought with stolen dreams. I pulled my arm away. "There's nothing to fix, Sienna," I said quietly. "You made your choice." I stepped over the $100 bill still lying on the floor. I walked past Julian, who was now surrounded by reporters and lawyers. I walked past Eleanor, who gave me the slightest approving nod. And as I reached the exit, my phone rang. The screen lit up with the hospital's number. My heart stopped. I answered. "Mr. Brennan," the nurse's voice was urgent. "We need to move Luna's surgery up. We have an opening tonight. We need to start immediately." I ran. 3 days later, the sound in the room was the only music I needed. Thump, thump. Thump, thump. Luna's heart was beating on its own. The surgery had been a total success, covered by a retroactive insurance clause Eleanor had written into my new multi-million-dollar contract. I sat by her bed, holding her hand. Her fingers were warm. Her cheeks had color I hadn't seen in months. She was sleeping peacefully. No machines beeping, no oxygen monitors clipped to her tiny fingers. Just breath. Just life. My phone was a graveyard of missed calls. Julian's lawyers, Sienna, over and over. Unknown numbers that I knew were reporters. I deleted them all without reading. The door opened quietly. Eleanor Vance stepped inside carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. She handed one to me without a word and took the chair beside me. We sat in silence for a moment, watching Luna sleep. "The press is calling it the architectural scandal of the century," Eleanor said finally. "Julian is finished. His firm dropped him this morning. Keswick and Laurent is now just Laurent, and they're scrambling to rebrand." I took a sip of coffee. It was exactly the right temperature. "And Sienna?" "Radioactive," Eleanor said with a hint of satisfaction. "Turns out being the face of a fraudulent empire doesn't play well on social media. She's locked her accounts, gone silent." "Good," I said. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired. Eleanor studied me with those sharp, calculating eyes. "What's your next move, Leo?" I didn't answer immediately. I looked out the hospital window at the New York skyline. The city I'd once dreamed of shaping, the city that had chewed me up and spit me out, the city that was finally, maybe, ready to let me build. "I'm going to build that community center," I said, "the one from my thesis, the one that was supposed to bring affordable housing and green space to neighborhoods that need it. And this time, I'm going to make sure the foundation is real." Eleanor smiled. A real smile, not the sharp corporate weapon she usually wielded. "That's a good answer, Mr. Brennan." Luna stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She saw me and smiled, sleepy and perfect. "Daddy," she whispered, "I had a good dream." "Tell me about it, sweetheart," I said, squeezing her hand. "I dreamed we were flying," Luna said, "over the whole city, and you were building everything." I kissed her forehead. "Maybe someday we will, Luna. Maybe someday we will." 6 months later, the construction site smelled like dirt and possibility. I stood at the edge of the foundation, blueprints rolled under my arm, watching the crew pour concrete. Real concrete. Polymer-reinforced, high-density, built to last. Luna ran ahead of me, her sneakers kicking up dust, her laughter echoing across the skeletal frame of what would become the Brennan Community Center. She was healthy, vibrant, alive. "Daddy, look!" she called, pointing at the cornerstone. "They put your name on it!" I walked over and knelt beside her. Sure enough, carved into the stone in clean, bold letters, "Designed by Leo Brennan, Chief Creative Officer, Vance Industries. Founded 2026. It felt surreal, like waking up from a long, exhausting dream into something better. Luna traced the letters with her finger. "Are you famous now, Daddy?" "I don't know about famous, sweetheart," I said, "but I'm building something good. That's better than famous." Across the street, a figure stood watching. Sienna. She wore jeans and a plain jacket, no diamonds, no designer labels. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. I saw her. For a moment, our eyes met. She raised her hand, hesitant, as if she might wave or call out. I looked at her. Felt nothing. No anger, no longing, just the cool distance of a stranger. I turned back to Luna, who was now trying to climb onto a stack of lumber. "Careful, sweetheart," I said, lifting her down. She giggled and grabbed my hand. "Can we get ice cream after this?" "Absolutely," I said. When I looked back across the street, Sienna was gone. Eleanor's voice echoed in my mind from a conversation weeks earlier, the last piece of advice she'd given me before I officially took over the waterfront project. The best revenge isn't destruction, she'd said. It's creation. Build something so beautiful, so enduring, that no one remembers what they tried to take from you. They only remember what you made. I looked at the construction site, at the framework rising against the skyline, at Luna spinning in circles with her arms out like she was flying. I wasn't building to prove Julian wrong. I wasn't building to win Sienna back. I was building because this was who I was always meant to be. An architect, a father, a man who understood that the strongest foundations aren't just made of steel and concrete. They're made of persistence, of love, of refusing to let the world make you invisible. Luna tugged my hand. "Daddy, race you to the truck." "You're on," I said. We ran together across the dusty lot, her laughter rising above the sound of machinery and progress. And behind us, the city stretched endlessly, full of buildings waiting to be imagined, skylines waiting to be shaped, and foundations waiting to be built right.